Hello everyone, this is Pilot and welcome back to another episode of Bionicle Lore Explained. Since I began this series more than a year ago, I've gotten many different requests for topics I should cover. However, one of the most regular requests I've gotten has been to make a video on the treacherous Makuta species. The Makuta, of course, were essentially the main antagonists of the Bionicle storyline, so it makes sense that you're all interested to learn more about them. I did briefly cover them in one of my earlier lore videos. However, there are many details I left out, and as it was one of the first episodes I made, my editing and voiceover definitely were not on the level they are now. Unlike that previous lore video, this one will focus solely on the history and lore of the Makuta species, leading up to the main Bionicle story. So hopefully this is helpful for those getting introduced to Bionicle for the first time, or even people just looking to refresh their knowledge of the lore. If you wind up enjoying this video, then please consider giving it a like and subscribing. It not only helps to grow the channel, but also helps you to stay notified when I release new videos just like this. And with all that out of the way, let's get started. Our story begins on an unknown island in the far southern regions of the Matoran universe. This unnamed island held a massive pool of the substance known as antidermis, a green and black substance that was the byproduct of the creation of protodermis by the Great Beings. Unlike other Matoran universe inhabitants, the Makuta were not created by the Great Beings, but instead by Matanui, who would use this pool of antidermis to form them. Out of the pool would come the only members of the Makuta species to ever exist, as beyond this instance no more would ever be created. There were exactly 100 Makuta, 85 male and 15 female, and they would soon form a new faction called the Brotherhood of Makuta, with Matanui appointing Makuta Mizrax as its leader. This faction was given the duty of designing and engineering new Rahi and plant species, and filled the Matoran universe with a greater diversity of life forms, though they also held a position as enforcers and peacekeepers within the Matoran universe, who helped to keep and maintain order. While the Makuta initially were more focused on the creation of Rahi, the rise of the League of Six Kingdoms and the Matoran Civil War were two conflicts that would force the Makuta to lean more into their role as enforcers. First was the Brotherhood's conflict with the League of Six Kingdoms, a faction led by the six Baraki warlords. Their original purpose was to watch over the Matoran universe in place of Matanui. However, their ambition led them to want to conquer the Matoran universe and overthrow the Great Spirit instead. Two of the Baraki had previously been servants to the Brotherhood before splitting away to form the League of Six Kingdoms, but one of these former servants was still trading information to the Makuta. Takadox, as he was known, had informed the Brotherhood of the League's plan to overthrow Matanui, which led the Makuta to quickly launch a strike against the Baraki. This joint force of Toa and Makuta, which was led by Makuta Pterodax, would see the defeat and capture of the six Baraki. The strike team had planned to execute them all on the spot, viewing their effort to overthrow Matanui as something irredeemably horrible. However, before that could happen, a mysterious figure known as Botar would take the Baraki away to the pit, a prison located deep in the oceans of the Matoran universe. The Matoran Civil War, on the other hand, was a major conflict between the different districts on the island city of Metronui, which had devastating effects on the health of Matanui and the Matoran universe as a whole. In fact, it got so bad that the Konoe Ignite had to be retrieved and used to revive the Great Spirit. The conflict in Metronui was only put to rest once the Makuta intervened. The Brotherhood's leader Mizrax sent Makuta Pterodax to stop the conflict, who would then proceed to lock Matoran in the archives of Onu Metru, for them to be slaughtered by Rahi. This display of brutality would force the Matoran into submission, but it also gave the Makuta a very bad reputation within the city. However, that wouldn't stop the Makuta from exerting their influence on not just Metronui, but the rest of the universe as well. From here on, a member of the Brotherhood would each be assigned to watch over an island within the Matoran universe. That way order was kept and any potential conflict could be avoided. However, rather ironically, it would end up being the Makuta that would cause conflict and destruction to occur, as the Brotherhood's second-in-command Pterodax planned to push the Brotherhood in a new direction, inspired by the now dismantled League of Six Kingdoms. In the wake of the Matoran Civil War, the universe would soon enter into a new era of peace and prosperity, mainly seen within the city of Metronui. However, among all the peace and happiness, the Brotherhood of Makuta was about to undergo a major change that would prove cataclysmic to the rest of the universe. It all began when the Brotherhood's leader Mizrax sent Makuta Mutran on a mission to learn more about the fearsome and mysterious Tributron, a being who was created by the Great Beings to sustain the Matoran universe prior to the creation of Matanui. When Mutran arrived, only looking to discover the intentions of Tributron and whether or not he posed a threat to the universe, it was informed of much more than just that. Tributron merged his mind with Mutran's, thus informing the Makuta of not only Tributron's identity, but also the way the Matoran universe functions and why it exists in the first place. As a result of merging minds with Tributron, Mutran immediately fell unconscious, but when he finally awoke he came to a vital realization. Since the fall of the League of Six Kingdoms, Mutran's fellow Makuta Pterodax had developed aspirations of his own to overthrow the Great Spirit. Now with the information Mutran had acquired, he realized that Pterodax's goal was possible to achieve, and shared this information with Pterodax upon his return from the mission. In response, Pterodax immediately summoned the entire Brotherhood to the island of Just-Rube, where an important meeting would take place amongst the Makuta. Upon their arrival, Pterodax shared his plan with the rest of the Makuta, and the vast majority of them were in support of it. However, the Brotherhood's leader Mizrax saw Pterodax's plan as disgraceful, and proceeded to claim that that Pterodax was attempting to take over as leader of the Brotherhood. In the end, only 5 other Makuta chose to side with Miserix, which led to their execution at the hands of the Brotherhood, which was now under Pterodax's control. Miserix would unknowingly be spared, however, as Krika, one of the Makuta assigned to assassinate the defectors, chose instead to imprison the Makuta on the island of Artwork. With Pterodax's takeover of the Brotherhood complete, he was now able to begin enacting his plan to overthrow the Great Spirit. Not only did the Makuta receive augmentations to their armor to accommodate their new forms as beings of pure energy, but they were also able to shun their inner light to become beings of only shadow, and begin recruiting skilled Toa to serve as guardians for members of the Brotherhood. Life in the Matoran universe will continue as normal for some time, but eventually the Makuta will emerge from the shadows to strike against Mata Nui, introducing a new age of cataclysm unlike anything the universe has known before. When Mata Nui first created the Makuta, their bodies were a mix of mechanical and organic components, similar to the majority of species living within the Matoran universe. However, following Pterodax's takeover of the Brotherhood, the Makuta species began evolving into beings of pure energy that lacked any physical form. Aside from their armor, the Makuta's bodies were now fully composed of gaseous antidermis, the same substance Mata Nui had originally used to create them, except in a different state of matter. This evolution granted the Makuta several new abilities, but it also required updates to their armor to accommodate their new forms. Since the Makuta were now basically just large clouds of gas, their armor was changed to be able to encase it and prevent it from dissipating into the air. This is an extremely important feature of the Makuta's armor, because if their forms of gaseous antidermis get released into the air, the Makuta will likely die. This is the Makuta's greatest weakness as a species, but their unique forms also grant them many advantages. Since the Makuta don't possess a physical body, they don't need to sleep, eat, drink, or even breathe to sustain themselves. So the only real way to kill a Makuta is by puncturing their armor. And even then, Makuta can still absorb other things to create armor for themselves, or inhabit soulless or robotic bodies to stay alive. The Makuta have also been known to produce slug-like creatures called Krata, a process that became much easier with the Makuta's evolution. These Krata are grown in the Makuta's bodies and are known to possess one of 42 different abilities, which are also able to be used by the Makuta themselves. Krata are most commonly used to create Rakshi, who are used primarily to form the Brotherhood's armies. And if all that somehow wasn't enough, the Makuta can also wear and use Kanohi, have a limited ability to shapeshift, and use what's called a Shadow Hand. A Shadow Hand being a large claw-like arm that extends from a Makuta's chest, and is used to latch onto beings or objects for the Makuta to absorb into their essence. Most of the Makuta aren't able to fully control this Shadow Hand, however, except for Makuta Kirox. Like most groups within the Matoran universe, the Brotherhood of Makuta contains an assortment of different characters that we've come to know throughout the story. So here's a quick summary of all the backstories for every known member of the Makuta species. First is Miserix, who is the original leader of the Brotherhood of Makuta. Eventually, however, his lieutenant and second-in-command Pterodax would take over as leader of the Brotherhood in order for him to be executed. Though unbeknownst to Pterodax, Miserix would instead be imprisoned on the island of Artwork. Makuta Pterodax is by far the most infamous member of the Makuta species, as he was not only the main antagonist of the Bionicle storyline, but also the first Makuta we came to know. Originally the second-in-command to the Brotherhood's leader Miserix, Pterodax eventually developed aspirations of overthrowing the Great Spirit Mata Nui, which led him to take over as leader of the Brotherhood. As a result of the Matoran Civil War, Pterodax also became responsible for watching over the island city of Metru Nui. Icarex was known to be the greatest warrior among the Brotherhood of Makuta, and was the Makuta responsible for overseeing the island of Karzani. When Pterodax first shared his plan to overthrow Mata Nui, Icarex was somewhat apprehensive, wound up siding with him. Along with Makuta Goras, Icarex would then be assigned to execute the 5 Makuta who sided with their previous leader, Makuta Miserix, later placing their Kanohi on display as a show of the Brotherhood's might. Mutran was the Makuta of the southern continent, and was often seen as the mad scientist of the Brotherhood for his intelligent yet unstable mind. When the Brotherhood still created Rahi, Mutran was known to have created many new Rahi breeds, such as the Clack and Blade Burrowers. Later, Miserix would send Mutran on a mission to seek out Tren Krom, which would result in Mutran receiving vital information about the nature of the Matoran universe. This knowledge would then be shared with Makuta Pterodax, who had used it to create his plan to overthrow Mata Nui. Antraz was the Makuta of Zia and was fiercely loyal to Makuta Pterodax, having been one of the first Makuta to side with him during his takeover of the Brotherhood. This loyalty, along with his skill in combat, gained Antraz's position as Pterodax's main lieutenant. Vampro was the Makuta of Odina, and unlike Antraz, was much less quick to join Pterodax. Unlike the other Makuta, Vampro is extremely quiet and prefers to stalk his prey from the shadows over engaging in direct combat. Kirox, in addition to being the only Makuta with control over a Shadow Hand, was also the the overseer of multiple islands within the Matoran universe, including Kitungo's homeland and the island of Vizorak. He was also known to have created numerous breeds of Rahi, including the Catapult Scorpion and Doom Viper. Krika, as a result of the Matorans of a war, was assigned to watch over a specific territory of the northern continent within the Matoran universe, though he also came to watch over Zakaz when Makuta Spirit went rogue against the Brotherhood of Makuta. When Pterodax assigned Krika and Spirit to execute Makuta Miserix, Krika secretly imprisoned him on the island of Artwork instead, installing traps and Rahi to keep anyone from getting in or out. Biddle was an ambitious Makuta who watched over several islands in the southern regions of the Matoran universe. Before Pterodax's takeover of the Brotherhood, Biddle created several new breeds of Rahi such as the Neazesk. Later, when Pterodax did assert himself as the new leader of the Makuta, Biddle was one of the first to side with him, and was also one of the first to notice the Makuta's evolution into beings of pure energy. Goris was the Makuta of the Trinkrom Peninsula and was known to be one of the most brutal members of the Brotherhood. When Goris came to watch over Trinkrom's island, she enforced her rule by punishing any who challenged her authority with death. Goris became infamous among the Makuta for this behavior, so Kirax and Mutran began to rely on her island for Matoran test subjects, who were more than eager to get off the island. Spiria was the Makuta of Zakaz and was mainly regarded as a disgrace by his fellow Makuta. Not only could Spiria not create Rahi, but once he gained oversight of Zakaz, he began experimenting on the Skakti who lived there, making them much more violent in nature. Once the Order of Madanui found out about the Skakti, the Brotherhood claimed Spirit to be a rogue agent, and from there on was exiled from the Brotherhood. Kojal was the Makuta who oversaw the island of Artaka, and is most famous for the raid he led on said island to steal the Kanohi of Oki. When Pterodax conducted his takeover of the Brotherhood, Kojal's cooperation was vital because of his role in the plan to overthrow Madanui. Luckily for Pterodax, Kojal did comply and sided with him. However, not everything would end up well, as Kojal was later assassinated on the island of Zia as a result of his raid on the island of Artaka. And finally, we have the last named member of the Makuta species, Tridax, who is the Makuta of Ninra. Tridax is most well known for his creation of the Tridax pods, the large glowing orbs you see in the chests of most Makuta. Tridax also came into possession of a Kanohi Olmec, the Mask of Dimensional Gates, which he would use to facilitate many dangerous schemes later on in the story. And with that, we have arrived at the end of today's episode. I hope this was helpful to you in one form or another, whether this was your introduction to the Makuta or just a simple refresher for stuff you already knew about the Bionicle universe. Just like the people who asked to see this episode on the Makuta, feel free to leave any suggestions in the comments down below for topics I should cover in future videos. And while you're down there, I'd also be curious to know who your favorite Makuta is. My personal favorites have always been Kirax and Gorest, since those were the ones I own sets of. That's going to be all for this episode of Bionicle Lore Explained, so thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Did you enjoy the video? Then do your duty and give it a like. Also, if you're feeling generous, then why not embrace unity and subscribe for more content just like this. If you've already done those things, then achieve your destiny by joining my Discord server linked in the description. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.